this interview, the president seemed to continue this strategy of downplaying the virus. Is this a coordinated strategy inside the White House? Because Republican leaders in those states that are suffering most cannot be on the same page as the president.
I actually think there is a fair amount of debate about this strategy, Steph, within the White House. You're absolutely right. President Trump continuing to downplay the virus during that contentious interview with Fox News, in addition to repeating that now widely panned claim that the virus is just going to disappear. The president again falsely said that the increase in cases all across the country is because there's more testing. That is a claim that has been disputed by top doctors on the coronavirus task force. They note the fact that hospitalizations are on the rise as well as deaths. Now, the president saying he's not going to issue a national mandate to wear masks, and more mixed messaging on that point today, Steph. You had the U.S. Surgeon General coming out and saying, look, it's critical to wear masks, and this is not an attempt to take away anyone's individual freedom. So in addition to downplaying it, more mixed messaging. So will that strategy change? To your broader point, we know that a number of his aides and allies are pushing the president to show more visibility as it relates to dealing with the pandemic. They want him to be holding more events. Last week, he didn't have any events focused on COVID-19. Will that change this week? That remains to be seen. What we do know is that another round of polls show that he is trailing Joe Biden by double digits. So undoubtedly, that is going to increase pressure on this president to try to do something or show that he is leading in this moment when we're seeing cases spike all across the country, Steph.
And reminder, if the virus was going away, the increased tests would be coming back negative. The opposite is happening. Phil, talk to us about Republican lawmakers and how they are aligning or possibly breaking with the president here.
Well, Stephanie, we're increasingly seeing Republican leaders, including governors out in the states, but also key senators, tune out what the president is saying. That doesn't mean they're necessarily breaking from him, but they're wearing masks. You know, Mitch McConnell, the Senate majority leader from Kentucky, has been wearing masks in his public appearances and advocating that for some time now, and has questioned whether he's going to even attend the Republican National Convention. There are sort of areas like that where you're starting to see this cleavage, and there's a recognition privately when we interview top Republican strategists that if President Trump's political standing doesn't improve by the end of the summer, you're likely going to see some of these embattled Senate candidates actually break from the president and try to establish some more independence between now and the election.
Kristen, the White House is now trying to cut federal funding for testing, for contact tracing, and Republican leaders are set to meet with the president today to discuss the virus and the next relief package. What's going to go down? Because a number of them are the ones who specifically put that additional funding in the next potential package.
That's right. And this sort of speaks to what Phil was just talking about. I mean, you're seeing this really remarkable clash between Republicans and the White House trying to block billions of dollars of proposed funding for the CDC, for testing, for contact tracing. Officials here arguing, look, there are already pre-existing funds. They need to be put to use, and they need to be used properly. But top Republicans arguing that there are more funds that are needed in order to adequately address this crisis. So that's one piece of the negotiations that are set to get underway today in earnest as it relates to the next round of stimulus. Steph, there's also a number of sticking points between Democrats and Republicans, including about the overall price tag, unemployment insurance, liability waivers. So a lot of sticking points. But here's the bottom line. Here's the takeaway. There is pressure on all sides to get some type of a deal done with the November election looming, Steph.
Phil, you've spent a lot of yesterday reporting on that extensive interview that the president did with Chris Wallace. What stuck out to you the most?
You know, Steph, what stuck out, first of all, the barrage of sort of false claims and dubious claims about the coronavirus really revealed the president's lack of fundamental understanding about how the science works in this virus, which, you know, he's not been attending these task force meetings. He's not been engrossed in the nitty gritty and the details And so he got a lot of those things wrong. But overall, it was his demeanor, I think. Every time Wallace asked him a question about the coronavirus, the president appeared agitated and rattled and combative. It's clearly not a topic he's comfortable engaging in. He's not willing to take responsibility for some of the missteps earlier this spring and with the administration's handling of it. And to watch Chris Wallace fact check him in real time and hold up charts presenting the facts to the president, as well as, of course, to the millions of viewers watching the interview, was something we don't normally see and was really remarkable.
Okay, we don't normally see it, Phil, but it was entirely predictable. Why would the White House choose to have the president sit down with Chris Wallace, knowing Chris was going to fact check the heck out of him unless the president was going to get on a different script?
You know, I don't know why they agreed to do that interview. It was not a comfortable interview for the president, and yet he did it. It was his largest media platform in months now. He tends to stick to Fox and Friends and Hannity and these much more favorable, friendly interview formats. But Chris Wallace is a tough journalist, and those were tough questions, and the president did not seem equipped or prepared to handle them.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.